Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to Spiritual Healing Podcast by Sufi Healing Activity. I'm Raqib Misha Kogan, and Nur Alima and I are your co-hosts, and we have a pleasure of having Devi today. Of course, you all know who Devi is. She doesn't need any introductions, but nonetheless, she's a Kafayat in healing activity, what we used to call Sufi Healing Order. And Devi also used to be vice president. Now Nur Alima and I are vice presidents sharing this role. And so we thought that for the second podcast, we really ought to talk to you, find out what's going on with you, what's future. And so, welcome, Devi, and I'll pass to Nur Alima to start us out.
Good morning, Devi. So glad you could be with us. I just wanted to take a second and say thank you. You have been so kind and welcoming in this whole transitional phase to Raqib and I. I don't know how other vice presidents do this without a Devi to smooth the path and answer all our questions. So thank you. And thank you for coming on today to talk with us. It's a real pleasure to have you with us.
Well, I appreciate
You
being here, truly. I have to confess, I've never done a podcast before, so it's a whole new thing for me. It's a whole new world. I feel like I'm having tea with the universe. So we'll see what happens.
That's the point. That's the first pearl of wisdom.
So, Devi, you were the vice president of the healing activity, formerly known as the Sufi Healing Order, for 24 years. And now that baton has been handed on to Raqib and I was wondering how you are feeling about the transition and what are you up to today, besides taking any of our calls and answering our questions and helping us fill in the gaps. What are you doing now?
Well, I don't think it was quite 24 years, but I did this post for a very long time. And when it was handed to me, it was like a lifetime journey. Whoever got the post just stayed in it. And it only became the role of vice president later on when we were trying to get the organization organized, when we were trying to be more, I don't know, I guess up to date in the world. So I have to say, I think first, let me just say, I think the two of you are doing such a fabulous job, and you're bringing a whole new impulse, like these podcasts. This is an amazing opportunity. It's an amazing idea. Yeah. My life has not changed very much with the teaching well, that's not true. So what I'm doing is the same thing, but with more people. So for example, I'm doing the things that inspire me and leaving the organizational part, which was never my greatest skill, to other people to do. People that are really feel called to that. And I have to say that's what's important to me, is to feel called to the role. And that's what has impressed me the most about the two of you, is each one of you separately has said to me, I feel called. Because, we are on a path that includes the divine, and that's a real thing. It shows up in intuition, it shows up in, those moments of inspiration, and it shows up when someone says to me, I feel called. Yeah. So what am I doing? I'm still teaching. For example, we're doing the Healing Retreat Guide training, but I'm not doing it alone. I'm inviting people to teach things with me, everything I do. So there are more of us that can teach those things. And I feel like that's my role. For example, Nur Alima, you are doing the healing conductor training with me, and there's a couple other people doing it, and everyone will have the material, everyone will have the experience of teaching it and can take it with them however they wish. It's not like I'm going anywhere, but I feel like I'm planting lots of seeds in a very real way, not leaving it all to me to do. I guess I'm coming up to date with the universe right now. And so I still feel inspired to do things. Like I'm very excited about next January and doing something on near-death experience, dying, and the path of the soul. And I'm so glad that Raqib, you're going to do that with me. And I invited Jamia Huck, a Maori elder and healer, and also a teacher in the Anayatia to do that, and there may be others. How did that happen? Somebody asked me about dying, and Jamie and Huck and I were talking about it, and we realized there are lots of people with near-death experiences that maybe could share, so that those of us that have figured out that we won't live forever won't also be afraid of the future and what it will bring.
Talking about living forever, I just started reading Bao's Immortality, and I realized you can't really read that. It's like little quotes. You read one and you're like, okay, well, that's for a week of work right there. So it's a fascinating topic. I feel like we're going to be going back and forth about this whole idea of the soul, immortality. And I don't know why I start going that way, but you said live forever, and we do live forever. We're just, not the way the current doctors want us to think of forever, right? So with that in mind, with all these opportunities and your soul being forever, what are you looking for next? Like the teachings, the retreats, but what else is happening? And don't be afraid of like saying things that not necessarily Sufi related. I think listeners, I think our Murids would love to know, how are you? What's going on in your life?
Well, I'm pretty good. I have to say that. What has happened is, after living for 3.5 years with no one in our home, all of a sudden our house is full. And so you may actually hear noise in the background at some point, because my daughter has been here. She's lived in Portugal for a few years. We have not seen them since way before COVID, and they've lived with us for the last 6 months, and they're going to be leaving towards the end of June. And then my other daughter is coming from Scotland and spending 2 or 3 weeks with us in July. So our lives are pretty full right now with family. And some old friends came up from Portland. I know other people have moved out of the whole COVID. We're living in a cave modality, but for us, it's just happening now. And people are starting to come out here to do personal retreats again, rather than doing them just online. So you're
going to start welcoming people into your home, because I remember there was such a treasured experience. I did retreat at your backyard in the tent, I don't know, 10 years ago. I don't think I can do that tent part again, but so that is something you're restarting. Did I hear that right?
Yeah. And retreat is so important to me. I feel like Pir Vilayat once said to me, one day of retreat is like 1 year of spiritual practice. And I have found that true in my own life. And so I will always guide retreats for people that have a need, healing retreats or inner school retreats. For me, they're all the same at this point. I offer what's needed.
How would a person have a retreat with you, Devi? What would be the process?
they'd contact me and say they'd like to go on retreat. A 3-day is a good beginning, but at 5, 7, 10, 14, 21, 30,
Okay.
40
They would
days.
they would fly to Seattle.
Well, now there's an option. They could come to Seattle, or they
Mhm.
can do an online retreat, because I've been guiding all retreats online for almost 4 years now, 3.5 years. Yeah, and we talk about it, see what why. Everybody goes on retreat for different reasons at different times.
Yes.
Do people have to have any qualifications before they go on retreat with you?
The qualification is you feel hungry for a retreat. You want your life to change, you're dealing with issues. You want to know, why am I here? Who am I anyway? What's all this business about God or the universe or my life? Let's face it, the world's a tricky place right now, and people are going through a lot. At least that's been my experience.
Yes.
And it's a good time to be on retreat and to know that you've got that as an option, whether you're a participant of the inner school or not, whether you're a participant of the healing activity or not. Sometimes you just need to take a break, turn within. So retreat will always be important to me, and training retreat guides, and yeah, and supporting
As a
through.
veteran,
I
as a
was just
veteran
saying,
of your retreat, I wholeheartedly recommend them to anyone who's interested. Even if you have an inkling that there's something you'd like to think about or talk about with Devi, it's a wonderful experience.
I do think it's important that you're starting to also bring the in-person retreats back again. I think that while virtual we got used to, but in the last couple of months, I think I've particularly been feeling that this in-person connection that we used to have needs to be brought back. I think it's powerful virtually too, but it's different. I think there's a lot more power in person when you can be in the presence of the teacher. So I think it's wonderful that you're planning on starting to do that.
Yes.
You're bringing up something that I think probably should be spoken about, and that is that people are used to living in a cave now. And I think that it takes a bit of daring to re-emerge and reconnect with the world. And not just for retreat, but for life too.
It's scary out there.
It's a different world. It's a different world, and it will continue to be a different world for a while, until we align ourselves just a bit more fully with the whole of our planet, the ecological truths, the social truths that are being asked of us. We're no longer separate countries and separate spaces in a very real way. We're one whole living organism, and it's getting more and more difficult to deny that truth.
It's a perfect segue. I was going to ask you about, we know how much you're treasuring some of your work you've been doing with Native peoples, particularly with, of course, grandmothers. So give us a little update. Where are the things with that? You just light up. You just
Yeah, it's funny you should
smiling.
Last week I woke up one day, and Rose Petty, who was just this amazing, amazing woman who passed on a couple years ago now. she was pushing at me, like, just, you've got to do something. And so I called, I spoke to Ayla Jamia Huck and to Moitu, one of the other grandmothers. I called them and said, I mean, Rose won't leave me alone. I feel her presence saying, get on it again. And what are we going to do? So we're planning on talking about that. Moitu's been in Germany. She's we all offer various teachings, and we'll probably speak sometime next week. So I don't know what will happen, but I do know that now that I spoke to them, now that the seed's been planted, Rose isn't pushing so hard. She's just waiting now.
No.
Yeah, for me personally, I missed the opportunity to go to New Zealand, so I don't know. Maybe you guys will rekindle that. I think they're opening up now, because for a while you couldn't just go to New Zealand because of COVID. I think things are a little better.
Yeah. Well, it takes a lot of energy, not just for me to bring a group of people, but from them as well. But I've gotten a number of calls from people saying, when are you going to go? And there are people that want to go to Australia as well. And I don't think that will happen this year. I guess it's possible it could happen next year or the year after, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see. It's a big commitment to do. But it's also going on a journey, it's like a pilgrimage into the divine. You just never know what is going to happen. Miracles have happened on those journeys, things we couldn't possibly have contrived to create.
I always wanted to ask you, to me, I don't really see the difference in a way between the way some of the teachings that I've read, native teachings, and some of our Sufi teachings. There's so much similarity. We're using different language, and some of our relationship with nature is somewhat different. But, so I kind of wonder, in essence, the Sufism is a native spiritual tradition.
Well, I went with Pir Vilayat to the United Nations once. Mm-hmm. We went to the Millennium Peace Summit when the century turned. And there were people that were conveyed to this UN Millennium Peace Summit from deep in the Amazon. Tribal elders who, I'm not very tall, and they came to about here on me. And they didn't want their pictures taken. They wouldn't come unless they would have that protection. And then they saw Pir Vilayat. And they sent their interpreter over to see if they could have a picture taken with him. And so he wasn't very much taller than me. He was about, 5'8", 5'9". And here's all of these people in their traditional dress that come up to like here on him, standing all around him. And the interpreter took some pictures of them together so they could bring his spirit back with them. So they certainly didn't think there was any difference.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful story.
Incredible to see. It was incredible because they made a big thing about how don't take pictures of these people and don't take pictures around them. Mm-hmm. And here they wanted him.
What year was that, give or take?
2000.
2000.
Yeah. Yeah. We were in New York City. I'll tell you another Pir Vilayat story about that. So we were at that Millennium Peace Summit, and we were all staying at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City. And they asked for one of their opening days that everyone wear their traditional dress and come to this meeting at the United Nations Assembly. And so we all had to go to buses and we got conveyed over. And as we were walking across the lobby, and you could imagine all of these people at the Waldorf Astoria, dressed in their traditional dress. It was like going to a Star Wars convention or something. So we're walking through the lobby, and about every 10 steps, somebody came up to Pure Vilayat and said, Pure Vilayat, I went on retreat with you, or I met you 20, 30 years ago, and we only spent these few days together, but it changed my life and it brought me to this place. And these people that were at this Peace Summit, you had to get a personal invitation. This was not something you could register or something like that. They're like stopping over and over for all these people to come. And finally he turned to me and he said, did you set this up? But I didn't know any of them. So I
think we should title this podcast, Did You Set This Up?
Did you set it up? It was an amazing experience for me to see how you just don't know the effect you're having on people. He really had no idea. He did not remember these people. And yet all of these elders of various faiths and various spiritual traditions were invited to this Millennium Peace Summit. And so many of them felt that he had deeply affected their lives. So I guess I'm encouraging the two of you. You have no idea the effect you are having.
Well, we'll be more humble. I don't think that we can match your shoes, but I think our role's a little different here. I think our role is to create container for you and for other teachers to really blossom in a new way, in a way that previously was not possible for a variety of reasons, and also to make the healing activity not necessarily more visible within the NIATIA, but more integrated, I guess, because I think in the past it always felt that sort of things were in silos, and now we're trying to really create kind of more of a continuous merging experience.
Yes,
which is we'll bring Bao in the next podcast. So I think, of course, he will tell us his vision more, but I think that's translating, Nur Alima and I translating sort of what he communicated with us for the vision, for general vision. And so I think that's kind of segues into my question. How do you see healing activity within the broader scope of NIATIA?
I'm not sure your question. Can you say that differently?
Yeah, so we have 6 activities, right, in an NIATIA, and for a long time it was pretty obvious what Healing Order was doing. But how do you sort of envision the future of what you started or what you've been running for all this time in terms of the whole context, instead of just saying, okay, well, we know we're going to be concentrating on healing practices and healing services, etc. But how do we kind of integrate the healing activity more into the entire order, instead of, again, as I said, being a bit more of a silo?
Well, I think the time in the world has changed. If you think back, well, I think back to when I first found the Sufis. I was in my barely reaching my mid-20s. And I was already a parent of 2 children. And I was part of a generation that was awakening out of a rigid paradigm where you're born into a family, where you grow up, you get a job, you keep the job the whole of your life, then you retire, and then you actually don't live that much longer, but you're in your retirement. And I was part of a generation that was saying, we don't want this rigid form. We don't want to have to obey somebody. We want to be free. We want to know who we are. We want to know why we're here.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of loyalty and rules, love was a big word. And so when Pir Vilayat came along, he was offering a kind of freedom that comes from self-knowledge, from awakening to who you are. And that freedom was all about awakening beyond life, about a vertical awakening to the divine. And so that's what I came into. And as he trained people, as they grew into their own, and as they took on the roles of overseeing the various activities of what we called then the Sufi order, which later became the Inayatiyya, those people applied that kind of freedom in the way that they oversaw what they were doing. And Pir Vilayat wanted them to. He said, go out, you build this activity, you do it. And the heads of the activities checked in with him maybe once a year. So he originally, everything's rotated around him. And then as he evolved, he, I don't know, cut us all loose to oversee whatever we were doing. Now we're in a different place in the world. Now we take for granted things like yoga, which were considered so weird and alternative and on the fringe in society. It's like part of the mainstream. Just as an example to how much our world awakening has changed. And so now here we are. We can no longer just think about how do I awaken beyond life. Now the challenge is, how do I bring my experience into my life, into the way that I serve in the world, into my experience of others? And that's the great challenge. And so it makes absolute sense for the activities to become part of one whole, which was Murshid's original vision. To be part of a whole, things that the whole is. The healing practices are woven all throughout the teachings. They're woven everywhere. Excuse us. Hi, honey. This is my little puppy. That's another thing I'm doing right now, is raising this beautiful puppy. She's our darling. Yesterday, for the first time, we let her out and she didn't take off. She figured out, if I stay around, I don't have to have a leash. See, everybody's growing. So, to me, it makes absolute sense that in the healing activity, I discovered these relationships with these amazing women, these amazing elders in various indigenous tribes, and developed this relationship with Rose over the years because she was curious about this business with the heart. One of our first conversations, she said, "What is this with the heart?" I didn't tell her we were about the heart. She just felt it. And for me, it was all about, what is this deep connection with the mother, the earth, that's so natural and so part of every breath. And I feel like that's what Pirzia is bringing. He's bringing the very real truth that awakening is here. It's not something that happens out there, or up there, or beyond there. Mm-hmm. It's not that those experiences aren't part of what we are, but they're part of the experience that we call life. And I love that. He has my absolute support. Yeah, I just feel like he's bringing the right note for the right time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Since you brought up the heart, let's talk about the heart of the healing. Let's talk about what spiritual healing always meant and means and will mean to you.
Yeah, your voice is getting a little difficult to hear, Raqib. I don't know why.
All right. Better? Is it better?
Yes, it's better when you're a little bit closer. I didn't catch what you said.
Yeah, I said let's talk about what spiritual healing means to you. Let's talk about the heart of the healing.
Well, to me, it's a part of the growth and the evolution of every person. We all connect with healing in some way because it's built into us, right? It's built into the way that we live. We just take it for granted. You know, you skin your knee. No one thinks my knee is going to be skinned forever. Everybody knows in a few days it'll be healed. And so spiritual healing is built into the body. It's just built into the way that we function. What I feel the healing activity has to offer is tools to activate ever more fully that function of healing that is built into the system. Just like we take for granted that we can love, that we can have emotions. We take for granted we can have faith in other people. We ignore that faith that we have in someone else might actually affect them and help them have faith in themselves. What spiritual healing, what these practices do, is help us to notice the gifts we've been given, to let them develop to their greatest potential, and to find satisfaction and meaningfulness in our life. And as a byproduct, we become more of a healing presence. And I feel like that's what our role is now in the world. That if we were part of an indigenous tribe, we talk about walking the beauty way. In the Inayatia, we talk about walking a path of love and harmony and beauty. Remarkably similar. It's really one truth that wears various cloaks at various times. And this is the time for us to find a way to come together, to help our ecology to heal, to help the various and unique and precious ways that people live in the various cultures of the world, to find a way to harmonize. It's important, not just personally, it's important for all of us. It's important for our children, our grandchildren, for future generations. The world is fine. She's going to heal. It's up to us to make sure humanity has a good place on it in serving. So the healing practices, they pervade the whole of the Inayatia. You see them everywhere in all the activities, different ways of saying the same thing. And in the healing activity, you have an opportunity to develop those inner qualities so you feel more connected, more alive, more participant with life. Yeah.
You have any thoughts about the direction that the healing activity is heading or should head?
I think that the two of you are right in the thick of it, that you're right on track, that everything you're doing is fabulous. I'm a big supporter, a big fan of everything you're doing.
Thank you, but I wasn't angling for for that one. I was wondering if philosophically, spiritually, you had an intuitive feeling about where we should be looking. We're always looking to the future. But when you're in an organization like this, you always have, I think, you as a vice president, you have one foot in the present, trying to maintain things and meet the needs of those who are members. But I think you also have to have a foot into the future, trying to discern where you believe the next step is to maintain and grow our group and our spirituality. I just wondered if you had any thoughts about that. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
I'm not sure what the question is. What are you asking me?
I was thinking this morning as I was walking my dog, I was thinking, where will we be in 10 years? Today, our emphasis is on trying to assist people on the path and to help people find the path. And we do classes on healing conducting retreats and Shirag training. And do you have any thoughts about what will be the next embodiment of that? Where will we go? What will we be in 10 years?
I don't think there's anything more important than loving our living world. I can't imagine anything more important right now. And however that is manifested for every person, that there's nothing I would encourage more urgently.
Okay.
All these practices that we do, everything that we do, for me, is about that.
Mm-hmm.
About finding a way to love those who are difficult to love. Finding a way to tend to the earth without doing what's expedient rather than what is best for the long-term health of our planet. Finding a way for our technology to spin us closer to a living connection rather than isolating us. We are in the midst of a huge, a monumental transition right now on this planet.
I firmly believe that I think we've made good starts toward synchronizing with others who feel this way. We've made efforts to incorporate our Sufi brothers and sisters in Oceania, but I think the future lies much that you've said, but also I see us as a more intertwined with Europe and Asia and Oceania. I don't see how we survive unless we come to a commonality.
Are you talking within the Anayatiya or within the whole of the
Both.
earth?
specifically the NIT, but I think
within the NIATIA, we need to stop worrying so much about saying the right things and actually do the right things.
That's a second title for today's podcast. After did you set this up? The second should be don't talk, just do the right thing.
I mean, instead of wondering which name to put first, call somebody up and say, let's do something together. Or, ask someone who was the source of something to be the one to do it, rather than co-opting what they've already done in the United States. I think that would be very good.
Yeah.
Not to worry so much about, are we including everyone, and just include them. Just do it. And, worldwide, be patient. Be patient. We're trying to find a way to be together. And the people who are most authoritarian are most afraid of this transition. And so there will be loud and horrible noises made, because bullies do that. They make loud and horrible noises. But if there was anything I'd encourage, is for people to realize the small things that we do at home, they have big effects. We are the homeopathic remedies for this time. Each one of us separating our garbage, each one of us choosing to weed the garden rather than do something crazy. Each one of us being kind to the people on the street and picking up the trash if somebody dropped it. Those little things right now make a big difference, because they come from a place of caring.
Something you said drew my attention. You said, love the ones that it's difficult to love.
Yeah, that's not my saying. Pir Vilayat used to say that towards the end of his life. He said, learning to love those who are difficult to love.
I find it that in a clinical work, that is a complete prerequisite for being a good healer. It's easy to work with easy patients, but it's really profound when you realize that if you open up to a difficult patient and you work with them the way their soul asks you to work with them, not necessarily with how they tell you this, that's when the most transformative healing occurs. That's what that's my recent wave of, I've been getting extremely difficult patients, like basically.
Yeah, and it's not just for that. It's
everywhere.
My daughter introduced me to the concept of the resting bitch face. I hope I can say that on a podcast.
That's fine.
And over the years, in doing a lot of seminars and retreats and things, every once in a while there's somebody who you think they are hating everything that I'm saying. And then it's those very people that come up later and say, you changed my life and I want to get more involved. And I've realized that you just can't assume anything from the way a person wants to present themselves. Really, it's up to us to actually manifest love and harmony and beauty. It's that simple. And it's not always easy, let's face it. Sometimes it's tricky. But in the end,
you just never know.
Just touched. A great revelation for me was to realize that my parents, at the very end of their lives, that they really were doing the best that they could, that they were precious people, that they had made mistakes, and yet I don't know, they're just beautiful. And those are people who I really loved. I was not brought up in a difficult household. I think that we can be the medicine for the future. It's not going to come down from on high. It's not going to come from big meetings somewhere. This is what I learned at the Millennium Peace Summit. I remember going to a meeting there where we were all supposed to talk about peace and harmony. And they put a microphone at the front. And then they said, does anybody have something they want to add? And people in the room stormed the microphone. They were yanking on each other and pushing each other away so they could be the one to get the microphone. And Pierre Vilayet sat there. He said, well, I guess we're not doing too well as far as peace goes right now. I mean, there's just so many ways every day that every one of us can provide the medicine of healing. And
we have to finish up. The time is running out, but give us the last word of wisdom, your pearl of wisdom for people who just stepping onto this healing path of becoming healers or taking up a healing profession.
I'll just tell you what comes to my mind.
Please.
In Islam, they have what they call the inner jihad. And what they're talking about is what happens inside of you. That inner voice that wants to judge you and say you're not doing well, or you're a bad person, or that person's doing better, or you just don't measure up. I think that the important thing each one of us has to do is begin to treat that voice like a child who is really trying to keep us safe and isn't doing such a good job anymore. And start to love that voice, to add another voice of kindness. I think if we do that, if we each do that, if we learn how to be kind to ourselves as a good first step, we'll realize that being kind to each other has only been practice, so that we can make that big transit inside.
Well, thank you, Devi.
Thank you so much.
We're gonna have to bring you back every so often. I hope you like this format. This is not closing, you've been not just helping us with transition, but you've been actually, feels like you've been teaching more, not less. So we'll have you back soon. If there's anything you personally want to add or share, we'll put that in the links. Like if you have any links or resources you want to send us, we'll make sure we'll put those on YouTube description of this video. And
or if you have a topic that you feel you would like to explore with us, I think we'd be very open to that.
Yep, this is also the new part of the format.
Yeah, it's a new model to me. I'm just learning. I think that it's wonderful. I'm looking forward to seeing the future podcasts. I watched the first one. I loved it.
Good.
Oh, good.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for inviting me to this. It's been fun. Yeah, and it's a great way to communicate.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Blessing. I appreciate you.
This is Nur Alima and Raqib, co-hosts of Spiritual Healing and the Healing Activity podcast. We'll see you soon, covering all topics of spiritual healing and whatever else is currently up to date in healing around the world. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.